Have you just heard about this guy who discovered a real-life infinite money glitch? So the guy's name is Dan, and Dan is 29 when the story starts, and he's a bartender living in Australia. And one night in 2011, he's out at a bar drinking, having a good time, and Dan suddenly realizes that he's out of cash. And so he leaves and he walks to the nearest ATM, and there he tries to transfer $200 from his credit card to his savings account. But for some reason, the transfer doesn't work. The ATM screen keeps saying, transaction canceled, and then it spits his card back at him. So Dan is like, well, that's weird. And so he tries again, but this time he tries to withdraw $200 directly from his savings account, and it works. The thing is, he didn't really have $200 in his savings account. It's some kind of glitch that's going on. And Dan, he's a bit drunk, and so he doesn't really question what just happened. He's like, all right, I got the money. I'm going back to the bar. And he leaves, and he goes, and he drinks more. Later, when he leaves the bar, he ends up walking by that same ATM again, and he's like, I wonder if I can make that glitch work again. And so he transfers another $200 from his credit card to his savings account. And once again, he's able to pull out the cash. So then he's like, all right, I'm going to try more. And so he tries again with $500, and that works. And then $600, and that works. And so at this point, Dan's thinking, did I just discover an infinite money glitch? And so he does it a few more times, and he takes all the cash, and he goes home. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds of how this glitch works, but after testing it so many times, Dan eventually figures out that as long as he transfers a bit of money from his credit card every night, his bank balance will stay positive, and he can just transfer money into his own account forever, or, at least until he gets caught. And so that's what he ends up doing over and over again. He's at the ATM every night, taking out thousands of dollars. In the first 2 weeks alone, he takes out more than $20,000, little by little each night, because for some reason, the glitch will only work between 1 and 3 in the morning when the ATMs go offline. But every day, he keeps expecting the police to come banging on his door. But every day, he's surprised that it doesn't happen. And a few weeks go by, and the bank, they haven't seemed to notice, they haven't reached out or anything.
He even goes to the bank in person, I guess, to check if they're suspicious or if he's been flagged, but no one brings anything up. So he keeps going every night between 1 and 3 in the morning. He's there transferring money from his credit card to his savings and then into cash from the ATM. And pretty quickly, he's made so many transfers and withdrawals that he technically becomes a millionaire. And this is when Dan is finally like, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to live my life like a baller. And he starts spending big. He's eating in nice restaurants. He starts staying in luxury hotels. He's going on vacations, like here he is in Paris. He's buying himself clothes. He rents a private jet for $90,000 to take him and his friends to an exotic island in Asia for a weekend. He gambles a lot because, he's really into that. And, just because Dan is a nice guy, sometimes he's generous. Sometimes he'll tip waiters like hundreds of dollars, or he'll pay for hotel rooms for homeless people to spend the night in. And so bro is living like a millionaire now. And according to him, this book, it really helped him with the ladies. So, that's nice too. Now, people obviously don't know he's taking advantage of this weird ATM glitch. His close friends know, but, other people don't. But they do ask him how he's getting all this money, and he tells them that he works in real estate or that he's an investment banker, and I guess no one really questions it, and so Dan just keeps having the time of his life. But here's where it all gets complicated for him. While he's out here having a lot of fun with his money and whatnot, and he and his friends are partying a lot, he's also the kind of guy who's never done anything bad his whole life, at least nothing criminal like this, and slowly but surely, he becomes super paranoid that he's going to get caught. Every day, he wakes up wondering, is this the day that they're going to catch me? Is this the day that this all falls apart? Bro is having nightmares over here about the SWAT team standing outside his door to bust him. And every time his phone rings, he half expects it to be the bank telling him, we know what you did, Dan, and you're in big trouble. But it never is. When the bank does call him, it's just them confirming some transactions he made for security reasons. Nothing out of the ordinary. Now, Dan knows that he could go on the run, like he could take millions of dollars and just disappear into some foreign exotic country, but then he might end up a fugitive, and he'll be constantly running from the law, and he'll never be able to go home and see his family or his friends again. And so honestly, this has been fun, but he's just tired of being paranoid all the time, and he's at his limit. And so after 4 months of exploiting a random glitch in his bank's ATMs, Dan finally just stops. In total, over the 4 months, he was able to withdraw and spend more than 1.6 million Australian dollars, or about 1 million US dollars. And instead of moving on with his life all honest, Dan actually calls up the bank and he explains everything to them and he confesses. But here's where it gets kind of weird. The bank more or less tells him that they can't do much about it right now, but they'll report him to the police, and the police will be contacting him soon, and he's going to be in so much trouble. And Dan, he knew this would happen, and so he waits and he waits and he waits, but the police never contact him. And 3 years go by, and it's now 2014, and still nothing has happened to him. The bank never follows up, and the police never reach out. Now, at this point, most people would probably just shrug it off and move on or be grateful that they got away with it, but not Dan. Dan, he's actually having trouble moving on. He's got a lot of anxiety and guilt from this whole experience, so much so that he starts seeing a psychiatrist to help him get through it. And I guess that psychiatrist recommends that in order to make himself feel better, he should consider turning himself in to the police. But Dan doesn't do that. He spent all this time thinking the police were going to contact him, and they never did. And so he actually comes up with a better idea.
He's going to go public. He starts doing interviews and making TV appearances and telling his story that way because, it's a really interesting story. Once he goes public, the police, they still don't reach out or do anything. And one of the producers of a TV show that he was interviewed on actually low-key calls the police and turns Dan in. And it turns out police had never been investigating him. It just seems like the bank didn't actually report him at all, like they said that they were going to do. And if he hadn't gone on TV and told the world what he did, he probably never would have been caught. But it seems like he kind of wanted to get caught. He was feeling just way too guilty about it. But anyway, and so bam, Dan is arrested. And I don't have a mugshot, but here's a picture of him in real life. Here's what's weird though. He actually goes to trial and no one understands how the glitch happened or how Dan managed to trick the ATM into giving him millions. Like the prosecutor doesn't understand it, the judge doesn't understand it, even the bank can't fully explain how their own system let this happen. And I guess because of that, they can't give Dan a very harsh sentence. So he only gets 1 year in prison. It's kind of worth it, huh?